And here we are. This is our castle on the hill, live from the mezzanine level of GOP. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Fox and Friends.
There's a homeless person out there and like a couple of protesters.
No, Mayor de Blasio solved the homeless problem.
Oh, did they?
He put them all in expensive hotels. It worked out really good. It's fantastic. We don't have any protesters. What are you talking about? No.
I'm joking.
Oh, actually, there's going to be a rally over at ESPN, I've heard, today at noon, headed up by Al Sharpton. We're going to talk about that. Look who's here, Laura Ingraham. Remember her. She is the founder of LifeSet. She's also going to have the new 10 p.m. show called The Ingraham Angle.
And today's a big day for her.
Tell us about this book.
Launch day. I'm with you guys.
Congratulations.
I thought it was important to explain to people who think that Donald Trump got elected just because, he's a celebrity, or he had money, or the Russians, or Comey, or Hillary was a bad candidate. The reason he got elected is because conservative populism wins when properly articulated and passionately fought for. And going back to the days when I worked for President Reagan, all the way up through, the Mitt Romney attempt to win in 2012 and everything in between, the populist revolution is real. It's happening. The working class is kind of tired of being kicked to the curb. So it was time to tell that story. A lot of personal anecdotes along the way, how I became sort of this, this believer in this. Well, it was really my mother, and growing up, as a working class kid, and depending on how you look at it, doesn't matter how much success you have. It's whether you know where you came from, and I do.
I'm right. I've totally forgotten, so I need to find out where you came from.
Kilmeade worked so many hours. I was going back to my hotel, and I'm like, who's that guy? And Raymond Rowe was like, that's Kilmeade. He just left the set of Fox. He's going to be, I'll see you in a few hours.
Yeah, you had dinner with
Bannon.
With Steve Bannon last night.
It was Bannon, and after Hannity, and people are like, God, don't cross the street together. And it's like, wait, there's Hillary in a van. She's coming
in New York City.
Yeah, exactly. Not a good thing.
So you can win back the House. But real quick, just about you in particular, when did you realize that President Trump could be president? Because it was a good field. You know almost every candidate personally. Yeah. When did you say to yourself, this guy from New York City might be it?
When he refused to apologize every time the New York Times demanded that he apologize. Republicans think that they'll be liked better by the establishment, the media establishment, if they say, well, I understand your concerns, and I didn't really mean that. And Trump said, something, I'm not perfect, I'm not a politician, I'm he is brash, but the public believed maybe it's time we need a kind of a wrecking ball to go in and kind of remake politics. And from the Buchanan brigades in 1992, remember Pitchfork Pat, to Nixon's, the silent majority, law and order, all the way to George Bush saying he was going to have a humble foreign policy. I mean, there was a populist strain through most Republican candidates, but Trump really embodied that, and the jury's out.
One thing that he really loved was the wall, and people loved it. Who's going to pay for it? Mexico. So now he's come out with this immigration plan. 70 points, you said? 70 different things that he says he wants, and top of the list is the wall. Nancy Pelosi has said, absolutely not. It's my way or the highway, basically. This is what she said. This is her quote. There's nothing in it to negotiate because it does not have shared values of who we are as Americans. Right now, we're trying to get Republicans to vote on what we believe. What we believe.
Well, the reason I put the word barricade in the title of this book is because Trump has to clear a lot in order to be successful. He smokes a lot of people out. And people think, well, why is he doing this? Why is he taking on Bob Corker? We kind of know where Bob Corker stands now. Bob Corker's not for the Trump agenda, and probably never was. We know where Nancy Pelosi stands. When Nancy Pelosi says, I believe in border enforcement, of course I believe in certain immigration controls. Of course I don't believe in an open border. What Trump did with that 90-point plan is he held up a mirror to Pelosi, the Democrats, and frankly a lot of establishment Republicans, and said, look, I'm willing to work with you on the Dreamers, but we have to put the American worker, the American citizen first. That's what that plan does. So you can't just say, we're going to legalize everybody, keep bringing people in. He says, whoa. This has got to work for the American middle class. It's been hammered because of globalization, and that's why he upsets a lot of people because he doesn't play the parlor games of Washington. He just doesn't do it.
He doesn't. Something you said a minute ago. You had dinner last night with Steve Bannon. Tell us one thing he said about how things are going right now.
He thinks it's time that the GOP establishment either get on board with the Trump agenda or move on. A lot of these senators, they're good people personally. Thad Cochran, Lamar Alexander, John McCain, they're pushing 80 years old. It's okay, that's fine, but it's time for a new generation of conservatives and thinkers to come forward who connect with the upset and the concern of the regular working person in the United States. When you're in Washington for decades and your whole life is shuttling between think tank and fundraiser and lobbyist event, you lose touch with the people. Sometimes you lose touch from where you came. And I think it's time for a lot of these people just to move on. They clearly don't understand that you can't campaign on repealing Obamacare and then 10 months later say, oh, that was just too hard. You can't do that.
Is Steve Bannon concerned about running candidates against established senators and blowing up the Senate for Democrats?
Well, I think Donald Trump and Bannon tried to work with a lot of these Republicans in good faith. Last spring, they gave Paul Ryan and McConnell a wide berth to do Obamacare repeal, and they didn't get it done. He's got to have good candidates. You can't just say we're going to take on the old dinosaurs.
They got to know the issues.
They got to be great candidates, and they also have to have some experience that's relevant to politics.
Let's talk a little bit about something that has gotten political, and that is ESPN. A couple of weeks ago, a host there called by the name of Jameel Hill referred to the president as essentially a white supremacist. She got suspended yesterday because she essentially was she was promoting a boycott of the sponsors of the Dallas Cowboys. The president has already been tweeting out about this. What do you make of what's going on over there?
Well, Jameel doesn't understand that private enterprises can control speech.
I'm not sure I understand.
Can you repeat that again for my iPad?
Siri does not understand what you're saying.
That's funny. Actually, that's a good sound effect to just have throughout the show. My producers do that in radio. They're like, okay, got
it. You would think after 20 years on this show, he would turn his computer off, but every morning stuff like that happens.
It was a late night for Kilmeade.
No, but I know that's the voice in my head.
But that is true. You don't understand. But think about this. You can't, as a flight attendant, wear political buttons on your uniform. You can't say anything you want. If you're annoyed by someone, you can't respond. That's the rules of behavior, rules of etiquette.
Well, you can. You do have the freedom of speech, but if you're working for somebody, they get to decide.
All right, well, they can say, so in the public forum, they can all these players can do whatever they want, and I celebrate their right, even if I disagree with it. So Jameel doesn't seem to get that, but she just echoes what the left is all about right now. It's about less speech for them and more less speech for their critics and more speech for them. So she wants to keep the race thing going. Jerry Jones doesn't care about your race. Jerry Jones cares about the football game being a game, being athletics. It's not politics. This is athletics. But the left, all they have is the grievance culture. All they have is race, and they're going to keep going back to that as long as they can.
Al Sharpton's going to go, I guess, protest.
But that's a shock.
As soon as he realizes where Bristol is, I think he might turn around. It takes forever to get there.
Yeah, that's a nightmare going up the 84 91.
But he's going to lose steam by the time he gets there. Mike Ditka never loses steam. He weighed in.
I think that you have to be colorblind in this country. You got to look at a person for what he is and what he stands for and how he produces. All of a sudden, it's become a big deal now about oppression. There has been no oppression in the last 100 years that I know of. I don't care who you are, how much money you make. If you don't respect our country, then you shouldn't be in this country playing football. Go to another country and play football. If you can't respect the flag and the country, then you don't respect what this is all about. So I would say adios.
I know one of the reasons Donald Trump won. That sentiment has gone unexpressed and unrepresented in Washington. Everybody is so politically correct. Everyone's afraid to say what he just said. This is the greatest country in the face of the earth. We're not perfect. We've had our dark periods. Every country has. We have done more, as you said, Brian, as you guys have said, every day to liberate the oppressed, to help people in trouble, than any country in the history of the planet. And we're going to take a knee? Well, I have a question for Al Sharpton and all these other critics. Are we going to have affirmative action for NFL players? How is the NFL oppressing African Americans? I think we've given great opportunity to really talented players. And to me, that's something to really celebrate.
Hey, the players are part of this. They get 55% of the revenue of the league. So they're in this business together, and now the NFL can't get out of it. On Saturdays, evidently, they're calling each other. They're meeting with players, leaders in the locker room. They're saying, well, what are you doing Sunday? Well, are you standing, or are you sitting, or are you kneeling? Meanwhile, let's talk a little bit more about your book in the big picture. So when Steve Bannon left the White House, he said basically the Trump administration is over the original charter. Does he feel differently now?
I think I'm not going to speak for him, but I think he understands that to have a winning agenda, you have to touch the heart of the working class person in this country. Reagan understood it in 1980. That's why he got all those Reagan Democrats in the South and the Midwest, the old Rust Belt, to turn out and switch parties. That sentiment is still there. I'm not saying there's as many people as there was in 1980, but that sentiment is there and it's strong. We've tried the establishment Republican thing. It hasn't won since 2004 nationally. So that the Bush GOP is over. I mean, they might not know it yet, but it's over. Doesn't mean we can't work with them on certain issues. We can. But that era is gone. And I think Trump is much closer to Reagan in his philosophy on trade and American prosperity and the working class than he is to Bush. And he ever would be to Bush. And to most of these Republicans on Capitol Hill thwarting him. And he's smoking them all out. It's nice to have, this is all transparent now. We know where everybody stands, where all the cards are on the table. Republicans campaigned on repealing Obamacare. Trump worked with them, said, you guys do it, you guys handle it, you're the experts. And the so-called experts could not get it done.
I wanted to ask you about Marsha Blackburn. She's running for Senate re-election, you know, in the Nashville area. And she put together a campaign video, talking about, remember when Planned Parenthood was selling baby parts?
Oh, yeah.
And they
exposed for doing that.
Yes, they were exposed for doing that. She talked about it, and then Twitter decided it was going to be too offensive to put...
She put an ad together, yeah.
She put this ad together. So do we have a clip of that ad? We do have a clip of it. Listen to this.
Totally dysfunctional. I'm 100% pro-life. I fought Planned Parenthood, and we stopped the sale of baby body parts. Thank God.
Too inflammatory, Twitter says, and they took it down.
Well, the left really never wanted to talk about what abortion is. It's very uncomfortable. It sure is. And the procedure of partial birth abortion, what it is, what happens to innocent life. So it's nice to hear all these Democrats talk about how we need to be nicer to each other and more compassionate, and this is all about respecting life. But when you really talk about what it is, they want to just say, oh, no, it's women's reproductive health, it's pro-choice. No, there's a human life involved, and good for Marsha Blackburn.
All right, she wants to replace Senator Corker in Tennessee.
For Bob Corker, yep.
Somebody that...
Well, there'll be a lot of people running, and Marsha Blackburn's one of the people with a strong reign. She's Congresswoman. She wants to take Corker's seat, and again, like Ed Gillespie in Virginia, all these they have to smell the coffee. Where's the coffee here?
Right. Check out her brand new book. It comes out today. Billionaire at the Barricades: The Populist Revolution, from Reagan, who she worked for, to Trump, who she's covering right now. All right,
thanks,
Laura,
guys. Good to see you.
I'll talk to you later.
Get some sleep.
Yeah. All right.
All right. Coming up straight ahead at 13.